We always start off with our first reading, which is a non-biblical text, and then we share our biblical text for the day. Our first reading this morning comes from Octavia E. Butler. She was one of the great science fiction writers of the 20th century, writing best-selling and award-winning novels over several decades, and becoming the first science fiction writer to receive the MacArthur Genius Grant. And apparently she knew it would happen. The Huntington Library published some notes from Butler's private journals. One telling entry is this inspirational note that Butler wrote to herself in 1988, declaring how her life would play out. It was as if she was manifesting her destiny. Here's what her note said. I shall be a best-selling writer. After my book, Imago, each of my books will be on the bestseller list of the LA Times, the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, Washington Post. My novels will go onto the above lists, whether publishers push them hard or not, whether I'm paid a high advance or not, whether I ever win another award or not. This is my life. I write best-selling novels. My novels go on to the bestseller list on or shortly after publication. My novels each travel up to the top of the bestseller list, and they reach the top, and they stay on the top for months. Each of my novels does this. So be it. I will find the way to do this. See to it. So be it. See to it. My books will be read by millions of people. I will buy a beautiful home in an excellent neighborhood. I will send poor Black youngsters to Clarion or other writers' workshops. I will help poor Black youngsters broaden their horizons. I will help poor Black youngsters to go to college. I will get the best of health care for my mother and myself. I will hire a car whenever I want or need to. I will travel whenever and wherever in the world that I choose. My books will be read by millions of people. So be it. See to it. Our biblical passage this morning comes from Psalm 139, reading verses 1 to 14, and then also 23 and 24. Lord, you have searched me out and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You trace my journeys and my resting places and are acquainted with all my ways. Indeed, there is not a word on my lips, but you, O Lord, know it altogether. You press upon me behind and before and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, a height my mind cannot reach. Where can I go then from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I climb up to heaven, you are there. If I make the grave my bed, you are there also. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will cover me, and the light around me turn to night, darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day. Darkness and light to you are both alike. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Examine me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is misdeed within me, and guide me in the way that is eternal. Did you know that every preacher has been told, and most of us agree and believe, that we all have one sermon which we just keep preaching over and over again? It's true. The puzzling thing is, somehow, this does not at all reduce the amount of time and angst involved with sermon preparation. Go figure. Nor does it take away the buzz of excitement when you find a new way to say the same old thing. Eugene Peterson is the author of The Message, a paraphrase of the Bible in contemporary English, along with a host of other books. His son revealed his dad's one message, something he would repeat to him night after night when he tucked him in as a boy. God loves you. He's on your side. He's coming after you. He's relentless. From our first reading, we heard the primary message from Octavia Butler, a science fiction writer. Her one message was, "My life's work will matter. It will impact others, and in turn, I will use my influence to help others. See to it, so be it." In preparation for today's sermon, I decided to do some crowdsourcing. I asked several pastors that I know how they would describe their one and only sermon. I also mined the internet for sermons from some of my favorite famous preachers. The very first famous preacher I spoke to was our very own, the Honorable Reverend Dr. Kip Gilmore Clough. He shared that his primary message has two parts. First, we are interconnected and interdependent. Secondly, the world is kind of awful, but we have to live in it hopefully. Emily M. Towns is an American Baptist clergywoman and native of Durham, North Carolina. Reverend Dr. Towns is the Dean and Distinguished Professor of Womanist Ethics and Society at Vanderbilt University Divinity School. For this distinguished theologian, who I highly recommend you listen to on YouTube, the most important message seems to be succinctly put this way: the praise only comes after we get real. We must name the suffering and the salvation. For my friend, Reverend Dr. Courtney Davis Olds, the message that she most often professes has some similarity to Kip's message, that faith is communal. You can't go it alone, and doubt is part of faith. So when your faith temporarily causes you to stumble and you can't keep upright, allow mine to carry you until you regain your footing. William J. Barber II is often on television. He's an American Protestant minister, a social activist, and professor. He's also the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Dr. Barber's one sermon can be explained differently depending on his audience. For one audience, his message is, you should know that the very people you have exploited now have the assistance of a higher divine authority, so watch out. To his other audience, his message is, moral dissent is your calling today. In his opinion, that applies to every single one of us, unless you fall into that first category, where you exploit others for your own gain, in which case refer back to his first message. One of my pastor friends answered the question at hand in this way: God's grace is sufficient, and Jesus came to give us more than just life. Jesus came to give us abundant life. Reverend Lenice Pinkard, my friend and spiritual director, who has many professional accolades that I won't share presently, described her message the following way: God's work is about recreation, liberation, and restoration. We are invited to join Jesus in liberation work so that we can be restored to a grace-filled life where we move towards one another and find a way to live with our differences without being in opposition. Jesus is an architect and has plans for all of creation, and we are invited to fill every living thing with God's animation. One fellow minister, the one who gifted me this stole that I'm wearing, said that her message boils down to something about the power of presence. God's presence with us and our presence with one another, in which God is also present. For her, it centers around 1 John 4:12. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and God's love is perfected in us. As someone who sits in the physical or virtual pews, you are far better qualified than I am to summarize the theme of my own often repeated message. But don't worry, I won't put anyone on the spot with a pop quiz to see how closely you listen, except maybe Aaron. Aaron, I'll bring you the microphone. Instead, I'll share my perspective about it. My one message is rooted in the Bible passage that you just heard from Psalm 139. You are fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God, and our Creator declared you very good. Your job is to try to hold yourself in the same esteem as God does. God has chosen and promised to be your faithful companion as you walk in the midst of trouble. That's it. It's all I have to say over and over again, and it's worth repeating every chance that I get. So why have I shared all of these profound, concise messages? It's certainly not so that you can skip church the next few Sundays. The myth that I'm trying to bust is not whether preachers have one message that they share over and over again. It's that only preachers have or need to develop a primary message. You see, you too are a preacher, someone who shares God's good news. You too are a prophet who warns people about what is coming. You too are a scholar, a teacher. You are a psalmist who sings songs of praise and lament. You are a writer of epistles. You too have been ordained. You confer blessings and foster healing. You are a practitioner of rituals and one who intercedes on behalf of others with earnest prayers. Every day you minister to others, offering an encouraging word, providing pastoral care, hearing confessions. For faith cannot be outsourced. Your life is a witness, a testimony about what life as a child of God can be like. You are God's chosen messenger. So what is your one message? Some of you are already forming a rough draft in your mind. Some of you may be concerned, like some of my preacher friends were, that the themes of what you stand for are not as clear as you wish they were. Others want to survey your beloveds to find out what lessons they've gleaned from the way you show up in the world. It's okay if you don't yet know what you want your primary message to be. But you could probably tell me your grandmother's, or how the spirit of someone you've lost still speaks the message you most needed to keep anchored. Somewhere along the way, you heard a message that plays on repeat in your mind like a favorite song. You too can speak a word into someone's life that may be more impactful to them than any Bible verse could be. And if you are still discerning what that message is, remember, you can always pray the words found in Psalm 139. God, you've searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You searched out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all of my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. May you find your one and only message and use it to encourage yourself and others, for you too are a preacher. You too are a teacher and a prophet. Your life is a living testimony that will continue to speak long after you are on the other side. So be it, see to it. This is the good news of God. Amen.